Most grooming advice for men over 60 focuses on what people see, the haircut, the clothes, the shoes, and all of that matters. But there is one element of how a man presents himself that people do not see at all. They feel it. They experience it before they consciously register anything else. And when it goes wrong, it is the detail that people remember long after everything else has been forgotten. Cologne. Fragrance is one of the most powerful tools in a man's grooming arsenal, and also one of the most misused. A well-chosen cologne, applied correctly, communicates confidence, refinement, and care without a single word being spoken. It leaves a quiet impression, the kind that people cannot quite name but do not forget. But cologne applied incorrectly does the opposite. Too much, and it fills the room before you do. The wrong fragrance, and it clashes with who you are now rather than who you were when you chose it. Applied to the wrong places, and it fades within an hour, or worse, projects far too strongly in close conversation. This channel is about practical, timeless decisions that help men over 60 look and present themselves with quiet authority. Today we are going into fragrance, the mistakes most men are making, why they are making them, and exactly what to do instead. Because getting cologne right after 60 is not about wearing more or spending more. It is about understanding a few simple principles and applying them with intention. The first mistake is the most common, and in many ways the most understandable: too much. Most men over 60 have been wearing the same cologne for years, sometimes decades. They know the scent so well that they have become largely immune to it, what is called olfactory fatigue, the phenomenon where the nose stops registering a familiar smell after prolonged exposure. This is why men who over-apply cologne often have no idea they are doing it. The scent they are applying has become invisible to them, but it is very visible, very present to everyone else in the room. Here is what over-application actually does to an outfit and an impression. A man can be wearing a perfectly fitted jacket, a crisp shirt, clean shoes. His presence can be composed and controlled. But if the cologne announces him from 3 meters away, that composed impression collapses. Instead of adding to the overall picture, the fragrance dominates it. People remember the smell rather than the man, and that is exactly the opposite of what cologne is supposed to do. The fix here is simply to reduce. If you have been wearing the same cologne for more than a year, assume that your nose has adapted to it. What feels like 2 or 3 sprays to you may be registering as 5 or 6 to everyone else. Cut your application in half and see what happens. If you are unsure whether you have been over-applying, the simplest test is to ask someone you trust to be honest, not "Does this smell good?" but "Can you still smell this when I walk into the room from 3 meters away?" The answer will tell you everything you need to know. The correct amount of cologne should be detectable only in close proximity. A handshake, a brief embrace, a conversation at normal speaking distance. It should not enter a room before you do, and it should not linger noticeably after you have left. A man whose cologne is noticed in a positive way is a man who applied exactly enough. A man whose cologne is the first thing anyone registers about him has applied too much. The line between the two is smaller than most men realize. And once the quantity is addressed, the next mistake becomes important: where the cologne is applied. Most men spray cologne on their clothing, a quick spray to the chest or the jacket before heading out the door. This is one of the most common cologne habits and also one of the least effective. Fabric does not project fragrance the same way skin does. The warmth of the body, which is what activates and carries scent through the air, comes from the skin, not the shirt or jacket. Spraying onto clothing also means that the top notes of the fragrance, the opening scent that makes the first impression, evaporate quickly and unevenly from fabric rather than developing the way they are designed to on skin. The correct application points are the pulse points, areas where blood vessels run close to the surface, generating warmth that activates and projects the fragrance. For most men, the most effective and appropriate points are the neck, specifically the sides of the neck just below the jaw and the inner wrists. Some men also apply to the chest, where warmth from the body can carry the scent upward throughout the day. One application point that is often recommended but worth recalibrating for men over 60 is the wrist rubbing habit. Many men spray one wrist and then rub both wrists together. This actually breaks down the top notes of the fragrance through friction and heat, changing how the scent develops and shortening its projection life. The better approach is to spray or dab and then simply let the fragrance dry naturally without rubbing. There is also the question of how many sprays go where. A common and effective approach is one spray to each side of the neck, the pulse points just below the jaw, and one spray to one inner wrist. 3 sprays total, applied to warm skin, is enough for most fragrances to project correctly throughout a day or evening. More than this in enclosed spaces, a car, a restaurant, a meeting room becomes overwhelming regardless of how well chosen the fragrance is. Less in very warm weather, when heat amplifies projection significantly. The right amount is always slightly less than feels sufficient when you are applying it. Now, here is the part most cologne advice never addresses directly: the fragrance itself, and whether the one you have been wearing still works for who you are today. Fragrance preferences and skin chemistry change with age. This is not speculation, it is simply how the biology of skin works. Skin becomes drier, less oily, and changes in pH over time. These changes affect how a fragrance develops on the skin, how long it lasts, and how it interacts with the wearer's natural scent. A cologne that worked perfectly at 45 may sit slightly differently at 65, not dramatically, but enough to shift the overall impression in ways that are difficult to name, but easy to sense. There is also the question of fragrance families and what they communicate. Heavy, sweet, or intensely spicy orientals that worked powerfully on a younger man can become overwhelming on skin that has changed. Very light, fresh, aquatic scents that felt clean and modern at 30 can register as slightly adolescent or generic at 60. Neither of these is a rigid rule. Individual chemistry and personal preference always override generalization. But they are patterns worth considering if you have been wearing the same fragrance for a decade or more and have not recently stopped to ask whether it still serves you well. The better move is to approach fragrance the way you approach the rest of your wardrobe, with the question of whether it still reflects who you are now, rather than who you were when you chose it. For most men over 60, fragrances that tend to work consistently well are in the woody, aromatic, or light oriental families: cedar, sandalwood, vetiver, leather, mild amber, clean musks. These tend to project with quiet authority rather than loudness, age well on mature skin, and communicate exactly the kind of composed, intentional masculinity that everything else in a well-dressed man's presentation is working toward. If you have not revisited your fragrance choice in 5 years or more, it is worth spending an afternoon at a department store or independent perfumery, not to buy anything immediately, but simply to test what has changed in both your preferences and your skin's response. Try fragrances on skin, not paper strips, and let them develop for at least 30 minutes before deciding whether they work for you. The first impression a cologne makes on the paper is almost never the impression it makes on your skin 2 hours later, and the 2-hour impression is the one that matters. And once the fragrance choice itself is considered, there is one more practical matter that many men overlook entirely: the condition and age of the cologne itself. Fragrance degrades over time. Light, oxygen, and heat all break down the chemical compounds that give a cologne its character. A bottle that has been sitting in a bathroom cabinet for 5 or 6 years, especially if the bathroom gets warm and steamy regularly, may smell noticeably different from when it was new. The top notes, which are the most volatile, degrade fastest. What remains after significant degradation can smell flat, slightly sour, or simply off, not dramatically wrong, but no longer what it was designed to be. Most men never think to check whether their cologne is still at its best. They buy a bottle, use it for years, and assume it is fine because it still smells like something. But cologne has a shelf life. An unopened bottle stored in cool, dark conditions can last up to a decade. An opened bottle, especially one exposed to heat and light, begins to degrade after 2 to 4 years. If the color of your cologne has darkened significantly, moving from pale yellow to deep amber, for example, the chemistry has shifted. If the scent has a slightly sour or flat quality that was not there when the bottle was new, the fragrance is past its best. These are not always easy to detect if you have been smelling the same bottle for years, which is another reason why trusted feedback and periodic reassessment matter. The storage solution is simple. Keep cologne in a cool, dark place, a drawer or cabinet away from direct light and heat, not a bathroom windowsill or the top of a dresser in a warm bedroom. The bathroom, despite being where most men apply cologne, is actually one of the worst places to store it. The temperature and humidity fluctuations from showers degrade fragrance faster than almost any other environment. This single storage habit significantly extends the life and quality of the fragrance without costing a thing. Here is the complete cologne approach that works well for men over 60. 1 to 2 sprays maximum, applied to the neck and inner wrist, never rubbed, simply allowed to dry. A fragrance that has been chosen or reconsidered in the last few years, from a family that tends to project quietly rather than loudly, stored properly in a cool, dark location to maintain its quality over time, and applied with the awareness that timing matters too. Cologne applied to clean, slightly moisturized skin lasts longer and projects more evenly than cologne applied to completely dry skin. A small amount of unscented moisturizer applied to the pulse points a few minutes before the cologne can make a meaningful difference to how long the fragrance lasts and how it develops. A well-dressed older man does not wear cologne to fill the room. He wears it to complete the impression, quietly, deliberately, and with the understanding that the best fragrance is one that makes people think about you, not about the smell. It is the final layer of a well-considered presentation, invisible to the eye, but memorable in a way that nothing else quite achieves. So here is what I want to know. Are you still wearing the same cologne you have had for years, or have you made a change recently? And which of these mistakes do you think has been quietly working against you? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. If you appreciate honest, practical style and grooming advice for men over 60, subscribe to the channel. In the next video, we are going into the haircut mistakes that quietly make men over 60 look older and exactly what to ask your barber instead. You will not want to miss that.